Say you were crossing the street, a little side street at the corner, and you wanted to measure the amount of time it took you to cross that street. Would you use hours as your unit of measure to describe how long it took you to cross a little side street? Probably not. Hours is a very big unit of measure to use when describing how long it would take you to cross a little side street. Even minutes might be a little unusual and a little bit too big. You'd probably want to use something like seconds. While hours could be pretty precise when you're talking about certain things, it's actually very strange and way too big to use when you're talking about other things. Or if you just wanted to break something down to be a little bit more specific, you might use hours, minutes, and seconds. The same could be said for degrees. To use degrees to measure everything just as a whole number of degrees might be weird. Just like saying 1.37 hours could be a little strange. Every degree, similar to every hour, has 60 minutes inside of it. And each of those minutes has 60 seconds inside of it. So today, we're going to work on converting from just a degree measurement to degrees, minutes, seconds. So let's go over all of this again. First, we're going to be converting from degrees to DMS. DMS is the abbreviation for degrees, minutes, seconds. And it's a more specific way to talk about angle measure. It's important to remember that 1 degree is really 1/360th of a full revolution, or 1 degree is 1/360th of a circle. This means that we'll have 360 degrees in 1 full revolution, or 360 degrees in 1 circle. Minutes take on a different notation for their units. Degrees is a little round circle in the top right corner, and we're used to seeing degrees because we've been using angle measurements for quite some time, and we also use that degree symbol for temperature. The symbol we're going to use for minutes is a single tick mark, or sort of like an apostrophe. That's the same notation we typically reserve for feet, so you do want to be careful, and you want to make sure you're using context clues so that you know how to read the unit of measure, because it will vary depending on the type of problem you're dealing with. With all of that being said, though, we can wrap it up with 1 minute is 1/60th of a degree. The notation is as presented. This means there are 60 minutes in 1 degree. This is also written with the presented notation. Last, we're going to talk about seconds. 1 second is a 60th of a minute. You may realize that the notation for seconds is 2 tick marks, similar to the notation that we usually use for inches. If 1 second is 1/60th of a minute, this means that there are 60 seconds in every minute. This information that we just went over is something you might refer to as a conversion factor in a class like chemistry. Sometimes just knowing how many of one thing fit inside of another thing is enough information for you to convert the units back and forth without a problem. And when things are very comfortable, like maybe inches and feet, maybe time, you don't even really think about what you're doing anymore. For example, my height is 5 feet 6 inches. If I asked you, what is my height in just feet, would you be able to answer that question? Many of you would be able to tell me that my height of 5 feet 6 inches is equivalent to 5.5 feet. 0.5 feet is equal to half of a foot, or 50% of 1 foot. If the length of a class period is 45 minutes, how would you describe the length of time using only hours? 45 minutes is equal to how many hours? Since 45 minutes is a very common interval of time, it's very easy for us to see what fraction of an hour it is, or maybe what percent of an hour it is. A lot of you would be able to figure out that 45 minutes is actually 0.75 hours, or 75% of an hour. Now, whether or not you were able to figure out any of those answers in your head as we discuss them doesn't matter. Even the people who can do it in their head might not realize how to do it, and that's what we're going to concentrate on today. The example we're really going to dive into is this one right here. The time of 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 12 seconds. How do I write that interval of time? As just hours. I don't want to be as specific. I don't need to have 6 minutes and 12 seconds. And while there are some people who will still be able to somehow figure it out and play with the numbers and get the answer, what's most important is that you understand the process. If you've already taken chemistry, do you remember how we would convert units in chemistry? It's important to know that anytime you know something called a conversion factor, such as 60 seconds equals 1 minute, you have an opportunity to multiply by 1. And multiplying by 1 is always allowed. 1 is a multiplicative identity. Not only are we going to be multiplying by 1, we're also going to make sure that we can reduce or cross out the units we're trying to get rid of. If I begin with 12 seconds, the 12 seconds is the smallest increment of time all the way on the right side. I wanted to write 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 12 seconds as just hours. I need to first convert 12 seconds into a fraction of a minute. Then my 6 minutes will become 6 point something minutes, and I'll convert that in the next phase. 12 seconds is how many minutes? What I've set up here is a small table, and it's really going to represent multiplication and division. Anything next to one another is being multiplied, and anything from the top is really being divided by anything on the bottom. How many seconds equal how many minutes? We just said that 1 minute equals 60 seconds. I want seconds to cross out, so I'm going to stack 1 minute over 60 seconds. Seconds will cross out, and I will be left with 12 times 1 divided by 60. Whether you divide this on paper or in a calculator, you will get 0.2. The only units left are minutes, so that means 0.2 minutes is equal to 12 seconds. I can take this 0.2 minutes and tack it on to my existing 6 minutes to create 6.2 minutes. Now I'm going to change 6.2 minutes into the decimal portion of an hour. I want minutes to reduce. I want to get rid of those units of minutes. I can multiply 6.2 minutes by 1. What version of 1 will I multiply? 1 hour over 60 minutes. 1 hour and 60 minutes are equivalent. That makes that fraction equal to 1. While minutes cancels out, I'll use my calculator and divide 6.2 by 60. That gives me 0.1033 repeating. That is equal to the number of hours. I can take 0.1033 and tack that onto the existing hour to get my total measure of time, 1.103 repeating hours. Now, don't let any of what we just did overwhelm you. This was just an introduction, and I tried to pick worst case scenarios to go over. All we really need to worry about right now is whether we are multiplying or dividing by 60. That's really what it comes down to. But the underlying technique is dimensional analysis. We are going from a certain unit of measure to another unit of measure. We will probably have 1 to 2 steps to worry about. And whatever unit you begin with, if you are trying to get rid of that unit, when you multiply by some version of 1, which will require our conversion factor, the unit you are trying to get rid of needs to be in the denominator, and the unit you are trying to convert to needs to be in the numerator. Listen to me again. you will have a certain unit on your numerical value. For example, degrees, minutes, seconds, feet, yards, whatever. You will be converting to a different unit of measure. The one you are trying to get rid of will go in the denominator when we multiply by our conversion factor, when we multiply by some version of 1. The units that we are trying to have on our answer will be in the numerator. Write that down. Rewind, listen again, and write it down. I hope you pressed pause and rewound and wrote that down as clearly as possible. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to write out our basic conversion factors that we're going to be using for this section. 1 degree with words, I would copy that down, equals 1 degree with the symbol, equals, what does 1 degree equal? 1 degree is equal to 60 minutes. Again, I'm going to write it with words and symbols. 1 minute with words equals 1 minute with the symbol equals 60 seconds, the word, and 60 seconds, the symbol. We aren't using the fractions that we first spoke about because multiplying by 1/60th is awkward. We would rather use whole numbers. Now we're going to carefully work out an example where we're given degrees, minutes, seconds, and we need to work our way to just degrees. We have 50 degrees, 6 minutes, and 21 seconds. In order to convert this to just degrees, a decimal value of degrees, we're going to begin all the way on the right with the seconds. We're going to figure out what seconds is as a decimal of minutes, and we'll tack it on to the existing minutes. 21 seconds is going to start off our dimensional analysis. We want seconds to reduce, and we want to be able to cross out seconds and only have minutes left in our answer. That means 60 seconds goes on bottom, and what is equivalent to 60 seconds? 1 minute. That will go on top. The seconds unit will reduce, and we will be left with only minutes. 21 over 60 will give us 0.35. That means we're only left with 0.35 minutes. 0.35 minutes will tack on to the existing 6 minutes. Now we have 6.35 minutes. We want to get rid of the minutes and change it into degrees. The minutes must go on bottom if that's what we're trying to get rid of. 6.35 minutes times 1 degree over 60 minutes. Minutes will reduce, go away, cross out. We're going to be left with 6.35 divided by 60, which gives us 0.10583 repeating degrees, and we'll just tack that on to the existing 50 degrees for a final answer of 50.10583 repeating degrees. That means 50 degrees, 6 minutes, and 21 seconds is equivalent to 50.10583 degrees. In example 2a, we went from degrees, minutes, seconds to degrees. As we worked on this conversion, you'll notice that we were dividing by 60 each step of the way. That might be something you want to write down. DMS to degrees, divide by 60. In this example, we're going to be converting a degree measure of 21.256 degrees to degrees, minutes, seconds. Pay attention to how this differs from the last example. also pay attention to how it's similar. We're going to start all the way to the right with the point 256 degrees. That's how it's similar. 1 degree is equal to 60 minutes, and we want degrees to cross out. 1 degree goes on bottom, so in this case, we multiply by 60 minutes. 0.256 times 60 minutes will give us 15.36 minutes. I'm going to use a capital M and say M equals 15 because that's the whole amount of minutes I have. Now I'm going to take the 0.36 minutes and figure out how many seconds that is. 0.36 minutes. I want to get rid of minutes and go into seconds. That means minutes needs to be in the denominator and seconds has to be in the numerator. After we cross out the minutes, 0.36 times 60 in the calculator will give us 21.6 seconds. Since seconds is the smallest unit of measure we're using right now, I'm going to round that to 22 seconds. So for our final answer, we will write that 21.256 degrees is equal to 21 degrees, 15 minutes, and 22 seconds. You have 12 questions for homework, 6 of which you're converting from decimal degrees to degrees, minutes, seconds, and the other 6 you'll go from degrees, minutes, seconds to degrees. I'm about to do one of each type with you right now. This is an exact question off of your homework assignment. If you have 259.0225 decimal degrees and you want to convert to degrees, minutes, seconds, you already have one of the 3 parts done. We already know how many degrees we're working with. The number of degrees is 259. The minutes and seconds comes from the decimal portion of the decimal degree. Now we're going to take this 0.0225 and we're going to change that degree measure into minutes. So we're converting from degrees to minutes. We can't jump right to seconds. If we're getting rid of degrees, that's what we want to cross out. It's going to be here on the bottom. We're going to minutes, that needs to be right above it. This is going to represent a conversion factor. How many degrees equals how many minutes? If I asked you how many feet equal how many inches, you would say 1 foot is 12 inches. You're probably not going to tell me that 2 feet is 24 inches. We always want one of these numbers to be a 1 if we can help it. Again, looking at your notes, how many degrees equals how many minutes? 1 degree is equal to 60 minutes. If we use a calculator, we're going to get 0.0225 times 60. The degrees reduces, we're left with minutes, and we get 1.35 minutes. The only whole amount of minutes we have is 1. That's the next part of our answer. Now we're going to take the decimal amount of our minutes, 0.35 minutes, and we're going to convert that into seconds. That means minutes needs to cross out and seconds needs to be left in our answer or in the numerator. Look at your notes. How many minutes equals how many seconds? 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds. The minutes will reduce out. Dividing by 1 means nothing to us. 0.35 times 60, and we'll get 21 seconds, which is the last part of our answer. So that means 259.0225 decimal degrees equals 259 degrees, 1 minute, and 21 seconds. Let's look at the next example. The next example that you're going to see in your homework questions is this one right here. We're going to convert 9 degrees, 30 minutes, and 45 seconds into decimal degrees. We already know it's 9 point something. We're going to start with the 45 seconds. We're going to convert 45 seconds into minutes first. Seconds has to be on bottom and reduce, so that we'll be left with seconds. How many minutes equals how many seconds? 1 minute equals 60 seconds. The seconds crosses out, and we're left with 45 times 1 over 60. This gives us 0.75 minutes. We're going to take that 0.75 minutes and tack it on to the existing amount of minutes. Now we're working with 30.75 minutes, and we want this to convert to degrees. The minutes has to reduce, so I put that on bottom. The degrees is going to be in my answer, so I put it in the numerator. How many degrees equals how many minutes? 1 degree equals 60 minutes. The minutes reduces. All we need to do is divide by 60, because multiplying by 1 means nothing to me right now. 30.75 divided by 60. If you type that in your calculator, and even before you do, you should realize that it's going to be a little bit more than 0.5. Does that make sense? We will get 0.5125 degrees. Our final answer is 9.5125 decimal degrees. So if you want to remember that when you're going from degrees, minutes, seconds to degrees, you just start at your seconds to your minutes and divide by 60, tack on, divide by 60, tack on, write yourself a little step of clear directions, because that's how you learn best. Do that. If you understand how this dimensional analysis works, amazing. If not, write down your sequence of steps and roll with that. So let's look at the other one more time. When we are going from degrees, decimal degrees, to degrees, minutes, seconds, you take the decimal value and you multiply by 60. You get an answer. This whole number goes towards our solution. We take the decimal value and you multiply by 60. This whole amount goes towards our answer. Definitely refer to these two examples as you do your homework if you need help. Good luck!